what's up? My name is Daniela and welcome to a new recommendation video. I will be recommending 10 books by Asian authors. Originally, I wanted to make this video in May during the Heritage Month and while the Asian Readathon was happening, but it's only coming out now, which is completely fine because as with any other marginalized groups, these books don't stop existing after the celebration month is over, so we can read them throughout the whole year. I will be mentioning books from different genres, so I hope that everyone can find a little bit of something on this list, but without further ado, let's look at the recs. So let's start with contemporary fiction. So from this genre, I have Convenience Store Women by Sayaka Murata, who is a Japanese author. And this is a very short book about a woman who is in her late 30s. And she has been working at this one convenience store her whole life. She has perfected her job, she's very good at it, but she's facing some pressure from the people around her to find a quote-unquote real job and to, you know, find her husband, have kids and all of that. And she might be a little bit depressed. She's not super happy about her life, but she also isn't super interested to be finding a husband, but she wants people to leave her alone, so she goes along with it a little bit and it leads to some bizarre situations. So I really enjoyed this one. It is a quick read, an enjoyable one, and it has interesting things to say. And it's also one of the Sayaka Murata books that doesn't have any distressing content like some of her other books. So if you want to start with her but you don't want to read distressing content like her more horror books, or if you just want to try her and read a short book, I would really recommend this one. Next we have All This Could Be Different by Sarah Tangam Matthews. So this author grew up between Oman and India and then emigrated to the US, and this book is a story about a young woman who is an immigrant in the US. She's there alone without her family because they had to go back to India. She has just moved to a new city. She moved to Milwaukee and she's trying to navigate her kind of predatory job, not very safe housing situation. So it's really about her personal journey. It's very character driven. It is also quite bleak. She is depressed for, you know, a big portion of the book. So be aware that it's not exactly happy reading, but I like that how it discussed being an immigrant and being a person of color and navigating queer community and dating. Then we have What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama. This is a cozy contemporary fiction and we follow a bunch of characters in their separate stories, but what they have in common is that they are at some sort of crossroad in life and they go to this library, and this librarian figure offers them the perfect book to read at that time. And at first it seems that the book doesn't have anything to do with their situation, but they do find something interesting in those books. I really like this genre of cozy books and this has been one of my favorites, and it also has some nostalgia for me. And then the last from the contemporary category is the Kiss Quotient series by Helen Huang, who is an Vietnamese American author. This is a contemporary romance series that I would especially really recommend for the autism representation, especially for the representation of autism in adult women who also are successful, because that's something that is still not widely understood and represented. I would especially recommend the third book in the series, which is called The Heart Principle. The books can be read separately or as a series depending on what you want, but the third one especially has a brilliant representation of autistic burnout. The first two books are more romance focused, whereas the third book has a romance, but it leans more into general fiction and it's mostly about the main character's journey and learning that she's autistic and then having to take care of a sick family member and going through the autistic burnout. So again, it's not happy reading, but I would still really recommend it. Just be aware of the content because it was a bit triggering for me. Next, we're jumping into fantasy, and my first fantasy rec is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sanggu Mandana, who is a Indian-British author. And this is an adult romance book about a witch who grew up quite lonely because she's an orphan, and her guardian, who is the head of the witches in the UK, feels that witches shouldn't be in contact much. They meet only a couple of times a year to be safe and not to be discovered and persecuted, which does lead to a very lonely life. So when she's invited to go to this house and become a teacher for 3 little witches, it's her chance to maybe find some community and also love. And then my second fantasy rec is one of my favorite fantasy books, and that is The Sword of Kaigen by Emil Wang, who is half Chinese. I don't read that many fantasy books these days, so when I do pick one up, I pick up the ones that are highly, recommended, and I just feel like they might be a banger, and I just had a feeling about this one and my expectations were met, maybe exceeded. In this one we follow a woman who used to be kind of a warrior, but then she was roped into this not very happy marriage by her parents, and now she has a couple of kids and is basically a stay-at-home mom. And now there is war looming, so she might pick up her sword again. And this one is absolutely brilliant, amazing. I love the characters. The plot takes you on a ride. I cried. It discusses a very complex relationship, marriage, and what could have been and why she made the decisions that she made. Then I have one young adult contemporary rec, and that is The Henna Wars by Adiba Jaigirdar, who is Bangladeshi Irish author. So even though I don't read that many young adult contemporaries these days, I really enjoyed this one. It also has a sapphic romance, and we follow our main character who is competing in this school competition, and she really likes to do henna, but some people who are not Bangladeshi also started doing this in the competition, so there are a lot of discussions around that, and she finds this girl and there's a lot of drama about if they will be able to have a romance. And overall it was just a really enjoyable young adult book. The author has several sapphic books or like high school romances, and I'm definitely interested in picking up more from her, but this is one that I can already recommend as a great book. And then the last category I have is non-fiction books, which is one of my favorite genre. So the first book I have is Disability Visibility by Alice Wong. Alice Wong was Chinese American, and this is a collection of essays from disabled contributors who have different ethnicities and backgrounds, but Alice Wong was the editor of this anthology. Alice Wong unfortunately passed away last year, and this is part of her amazing work that she did for the disabled community. As I said, in this collection you will find essays from people from all kinds of different backgrounds, different disabilities, different relationship with their disabilities, and it was very thought-provoking, very diverse, so I would highly recommend it. On a similar topic, I would really like to recommend the Anti-Ableist Manifesto by Tiffany Yu, who is American with Taiwanese and Vietnamese heritage. I listened to this on audio, and I believe it's read by the author, and I found this book very interesting as well. And it talks about the author's personal experience with disability and also about disability theory and how the world approaches disability and how disabled people approach the world, etc. So I would highly recommend it. It was really engaging and thought-provoking, and the audiobook was great to listen to. And then my last non-fiction tip and the last recommendation of this video is Ace by Angela Chen. So Angela Chen is Chinese American, and this talks about all kinds of things related to asexuality, about the author's own experience but also experiences of other people. I liked that it included the intersection between race and asexuality and also disability and asexuality. There is also a chapter on consent, which really made me pause and further rethink all my previous life. I found this book really interesting and really well done. I tapped a lot of things, and this is one of the books that I think that everybody should read and could benefit from. And even if you think that asexuality doesn't relate to your life in any way, I really think that everyone could benefit from this book. Even if it's not your identity or you don't know anyone who might be ace, it's always good to learn about other identities at the least. And asexuality in particular is an identity that often gets misunderstood and misrepresented. So I'm just really glad this book exists, and I would recommend it to absolutely everyone. And that actually is true for all of the books I mentioned in the non-fiction section specifically, because with fiction we can have different tastes and prefer different genres and stuff. But yeah, these non-fiction books, I really think they are worth your while, and I would be especially happy if people picked up something from the non-fiction based on my recommendation. So that would be all for my recommendations. Definitely let me know if you have read any of these books and what did you think. And also be sure to comment some of your favorite books that you have read by Asian authors. I try to include people from different Asian countries and not to focus only on the few that get the most representation. So I'm definitely always looking for more recommendations so that I can further expand my horizon. But that would be all for today's video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and also click the notification bell so you don't miss my future uploads. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!